Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We begin in Nepal with a photojournalist named Ted setting up camp with his girlfriend. Marjorie talks about a whole bunch of stuff but none of it comes into play later, so we skip to them fooling around in the tent. Outside around the campfire sits the Nepalese guides awkwardly listening to everything going on as they try to ignore it. Fortunately for them, something spooks the horses, so they have an excuse to leave the Americans and chase them down. One Sherpa still remains to hear the end of the show but is killed by a first-person camera that is immediately revealed as a werewolf. It rips Marjorie out of the tent in a case of coitus interruptus and slashes Ted across the chest because he tries to fight this thing with his fists instead of grabbing his gun. Crawling his bare bottom over to the shotgun while his girlfriend's torn apart, he manages to reach it just in time to see her wolf slapped into the ground. With a single shot he blows the werewolf's head off because silver bullets aren't going to be a thing in this movie. Returning to America, he begins living in a trailer in the woods where strange animal attacks begin occurring the moment he moves in. While one surveyor is out measuring trees like, "Yep, that's a good one," he hears this sound. So he runs for his life no matter what made it, but as soon as he stops for a breath, a werewolf bites right through his helmet. Meanwhile in Chicago, a young boy is playing with his German Shepherd Thor when a stranger comes by the house. Flopsy is a slip and sew con artist pretending to sell school books for children and gets his name from Brett's mother. Janet asks for some identification, so he opens his briefcase in a threatening manner which antagonizes Thor to bark. He makes a big deal out of it, but that wasn't enough, so he raises his hand so the dog will bite him and Thor bails him over. Claiming he was bitten when he wasn't, Janet reveals she's a lawyer onto his ruse and Flopsy is going to have to prove any of this in court. She tells Thor to keep out of it because Janet can hold her own against douchebaggery and tells the rookie to take a hike. That night Thor puts the kid to sleep, then walks over to Mom's room to receive the nod of approval before going downstairs to watch some Leno. The next morning Janet receives a call from her brother inviting the family for a meal at his trailer just a short drive away. When they arrive, Thor doesn't sense anything wrong with Ted but tracks a smell into the woods while the adults set up for lunch. The first lie Ted tells Janet is that his girlfriend Marge only broke up with him, but not that she became a werewolf's chew toy. While having jump scares of his own in the woods, Thor discovers one of these chew toys in the form of human remains scattered through a tree. He runs to tell Mom while Brett snoops around the trailer and finds Uncle Ted's lab and book about werewolves he uses to try to find a cure. Now Thor is giving the jump scares himself and is wary of Ted, but not enough to turn down pets when they're offered so freely. Before the sun goes down, the family leaves at Ted's request, who turns down his sister's offer to stay with them for their own safety. It's only later in the day that he takes up Janet's offer because there's an investigation into the body, as Thor must have called the police. She allows Ted to park his trailer in the backyard but must get a lift with somebody because we never see him with a car. However, Thor's onto him and shows Mom the set of high tensile cuffs in Ted's bag, but she has a blind spot for him and just assumes they're kinky.
Come on, Thor.
Thor watches this man like a hawk, so when he goes out in the middle of the night to supposedly jog, he begins tearing up the place to be let out. He tracks Ted's scent into the woods and finds him as a large werewolf handcuffed like a hippie around a tree, unable to escape. They lock eyes, and this would be the perfect moment for Thor to attack while the beast is restrained, but he hears Janet calling out. He ignores her for a bit, but when she gets too close he leads her back to the house to protect Mom from stumbling upon the werewolf. The next day while making breakfast, Janet sees a live report about the lake killings, but somehow her brother's trailer is in the background. Thor also doesn't like this inconsistency, so he pisses on the tin can and Ted receives the warning that this isn't his territory. Janet confronts him on the bodies but presumes he had nothing to do with it and invites him to stay indefinitely until everything settles down. While Brett is watching the classic film Werewolf of London, Ted laughs at the idea of needing a full moon to transform. This implies that showing us a full moon every time he changes means nothing, but he also says you need to be bitten despite himself only being scratched, so who knows if he has any clue. All these things along with dying to any old shotgun means that this guy is really just a big wolf that moves slightly slower than a regular human. He warns Janet to keep the kid inside at night because the killer wolves are on the loose, but the news lady earlier said that it was a bear. She ignores another red flag, and that night when he leaves to chain himself up, Thor is sitting outside Ted's trailer with a big cheesy grin. He wastes so much time having a staring contest with the dog before the genius finally thinks to call Janet to take him inside. However, it's too late, so when Brett lets out the agitated Thor, he locates the unlocked handcuffs as Ted didn't have time to secure himself. Thor finds the werewolf Ted has made his way into the backyard, so leaps on him to protect the family, and the two fight. It's only brief before Janet wakes up to the commotion and turns on the porch lights, which causes her hairy brother to flee back into the woods. She finds Thor injured but not enough to bring to the vet apparently, so cleans him up herself, and he spends the rest of the night in Brett's room. She then goes out to the trailer to warn Ted about the attack but finds it empty and decides to snoop around because why not? Janet finds the book about werewolves, a gruesome photo of Ted's dead girlfriend, and his own diary entry about having a disease. He says he blacks out and will come home with other people's blood on his hands, but none of this convinces Janet to call the sheriff. Ted writes that he's failed with every medicine and hopes that the love of his family will cure him, which makes him completely delusional. He's braved the spotlights and lurks outside of the trailer, but Janet leaves safely because werewolf Ted gets distracted by Flopsy. This psycho has come to slice Thor up with a cleaver for embarrassing him earlier, but werewolf Ted politely waits for him to turn around. He then rips out Flopsy's throat and flings him through the air into the bushes and landing hundreds of feet down the road. At least that's where Sheriff Jenson says he was found when telling Janet the next morning about the animal attack. He says there's no way the killer could be a human and then blames Thor for trying to protect the family and having a taste for blood. Since German Shepherds don't have 10-inch razor blades on their paws, Janet doesn't believe he did it and confronts Ted on his whereabouts last night. To get the heat off him, he provokes Thor into biting him, and he does a good job of tearing up one arm before Mom pulls him away. Now she assumes he had something to do with it, so Janet calls the dog pound, who arrives to remove the family's guardian by force. Janet holds back Brett while dog catchers take him away, and Uncle Ted stands on the porch waving with his stupid face. He then goes and pisses on the doghouse to mark his territory and begins acting hostile towards the family. Brett blames Ted for everything because he knows Thor wouldn't attack for no reason, then pretends to go to bed after dinner. However, he sneaks out with his bike to go rescue his best friend. Janet decides to ask Ted straight up where Marjorie is, and since he tells her she's gone to Seattle, she now knows he's concealing her murder. She doesn't call the sheriff, of course, and just watches like Thor through the window as he sneaks off into the woods to chain himself up. It's completely dark already and he makes it to the tree no problem, yet his previous transformation happened while it was still light outside. Fearing this man enough to bring a gun with her but not enough to load it, Janet follows Ted into the woods after tricking us into believing she's an intelligent lawyer. Ted smells her before she even arrives, which is a testament to his abilities, not her odor, but hasn't shackled himself to the tree yet. He blames her for not listening to Thor when he tried to warn the family, but this douchebag is the one who had him sent away. Ted begins transforming and says that he was foolish to think love could save him, so he's about caught up with everybody else. Janet trips over her own feet, then runs into the woods while her brother uses a morphing effect to finish transforming into a crooked mouth. He then bursts out of his shoes and chases Janet through the woods, but they both run about the same speed all the way back to the house. She grabs a handful of bullets which are kept in the kitchen, but before she can load the gun, Ted smashes through the window. Janet's got some moves on her and slips a few slashes before fleeing upstairs, and has never been more delighted to find Brett snuck out. The menace reaches the pound and releases his canine protector, who runs back home flat stick with Brett trailing on his bike. When he arrives, werewolf Ted has just broken through into Brett's room and is about to hurt Mom, so Thor leaps on his uncle's back. They engage in a vicious fight that sees a dog plushie get used whenever werewolf Ted makes a throw that's too dangerous. He looks more like he's playing with the dog until Thor pushes him into the desk and then latches onto his neck. Blood sprays out all over the room, so Ted hurls the stuffed Thor into the light fixture and grabs Brett by the throat right as he enters. He must be pretty gentle because before any harm happens to the boy, Janet loads the handful of bullets into the gun and empties it into her brother. Werewolf Ted drops Brett and spins around, but not a single headshot lands, so a recovered Thor has to do everything himself. He tackles Uncle Ted out of the second-story window and they both land in the yard beside each other and just lie there. A badly injured Ted gets up first and staggers into the woods, followed shortly after by Thor, who's completely unharmed. It's sunrise by the time he locates his uncle, as he's reverted back into a human, and tells Thor to finish him off. So this man's best friend doesn't hesitate for a second to presumably rip out his throat. The final scene shows Janet apologizing to Thor for believing Ted over him, but that was her human brother, while this is a dog, so it's understandable. Thor suddenly turns into a werewolf, but Janet wakes up only having one of the many nightmares that are sure to follow. And the movie ends.